Dylan Sanders stood at the edge of a gravel parking lot, his breath puffing white in the cool morning air of Wyoming's rugged backcountry. He was here not just for another photography expedition, but for a final attempt to ease the dull ache in his chest. Barely a week had passed since his beloved grandmother's funeral. She had been his rock, the person who taught him to see beauty in the simplest things, like a pine cone resting on moss, or the reflection of sunlight on a still lake. Now, the sprawling wilderness seemed the only place that might offer him peace. The morning sun was rising, casting elongated shadows across the dirt path. Each step Dylan took felt weighted with grief, yet tinged with a small hope that nature might soothe his sorrow. He had always found a special solace in the wild, where the hush of the wind and the rustle of leaves reminded him of life's ebb and flow. Dylan cinched the straps on his backpack, containing his camera and minimal supplies. He pressed a palm to the locket at his neck, a keepsake from his grandmother, whispering a silent promise that this journey would be for her. With one final breath to steady himself, he set off into the Wyoming wilderness, ready for the unknown. The trail wound through an evergreen forest, dappled sunlight filtering through tall pines. Dylan's destination lay far beyond the usual tourist paths, a remote ridge boasting panoramic views, rumored to be a haven for rare wildlife. He had studied topographical maps for weeks, pinpointing this location as both a prime photography spot and an escape from the noise of daily life. As the trail gradually rose, glimpses of snow-capped peaks appeared in the distance. Though the climb was strenuous, each step renewed Dylan's resolve. His camera swung gently at his side, reminding him of why he had ventured here. Not merely to capture photographs, but to reconnect with the living world. A deeper reason underpinned his journey. Throughout childhood, his grandmother had regaled him with stories of hidden mountain sanctuaries and legends of guardian animals that protected travelers in times of need. Maybe it was a fable, but Dylan felt a longing to find something extraordinary in these forests, a sign or a moment that would heal him from the inside out. The trail narrowed perilously, skirting a steep drop where loose rocks tumbled with the slightest disturbance. Focused on maintaining his footing, Dylan nearly missed the faint whimper that floated through the air. It was a sound both mournful and urgent, cutting through the silence. Curiosity piqued, Dylan turned in a slow circle, scanning the ledge below. A small movement drew his gaze downward, a tiny bear cub, trembling and desperately clinging to the edge of a narrow rock outcrop. The cub's paws scrabbled for a grip on the loose surface. Terror gleamed in its wide, dark eyes. Dylan's heart lurched at the sight. The mere idea of a stranded bear cub was unsettling, but seeing its predicament was far worse. It seemed only a small shift in weight away from plunging down the steep ravine. Reflexively, Dylan stepped closer to the drop-off for a better look. His pulse thudded in his ears, mixing anxiety with adrenaline. Looking around, he saw no sign of the mother bear, and his chest constricted with urgency. This cub was utterly alone and in immediate danger. The sense of responsibility weighed on him. If he walked away, the cub would almost certainly die. Yet helping it was fraught with risk, and not just from the precarious climb. The mother bear could be nearby, ready to protect her offspring. Torn between caution and compassion, Dylan crouched to decide his next move. Dylan bit his lip, inhaling sharply as he measured the distance down to the cub. It was significant, and one misstep could send him tumbling into the ravine below. He could turn back and alert park rangers, but that might take hours, and the cub didn't have that kind of time. A wave of doubt rippled through him. He wasn't an experienced climber. He was a photographer with some basic outdoors training. But if there was one thing Dylan knew, it was that the wilderness demanded respect and empathy. Standing by while a young animal lost its life felt unbearable. The moment stretched. The cub let out another plaintive cry, as though calling for a mother who wasn't there. Something in Dylan snapped into resolve. Fear gave way to a fierce determination. He would try. He would do everything in his power to save this small creature, just as his grandmother had taught him. Never turn your back on a life you can save. Steeling himself, Dylan began unfastening the coil of rope attached to his pack. His breath trembled, but resolve now guided him more than reason. He laid out a plan: secure the rope to a sturdy tree, rappel to the cub, and then somehow climb back up. It wasn't a foolproof plan by any means, yet the urgency overshadowed the uncertainties. Dylan scanned the tree line until he found a robust pine that would anchor his rope securely. Setting his pack down, he worked methodically, slipping the rope around the thickest trunk available and testing its tension. The bark dug into his palms as he tugged, ensuring it wouldn't come loose during the rescue. He checked his carabiner and the knots, an improvised harness made from spare straps. It wasn't professional-grade climbing gear, but it would have to do. Heart pounding, Dylan tested the system's weight by leaning back carefully. The rope held. He loaded his pockets with essentials: a pocket knife, a small first aid kit, and a loop of additional cord. Then, with the rope firmly in place, he threw one end over the ledge, watching it unravel down the face of the cliff. A swirl of thoughts overtook him. What if I slip? What if the mother bear shows up in the middle of this? Yet, the anxious questions yielded to a single statement echoing in his mind. I have to try. Squaring his shoulders, he prepared to step over the edge. Lowering himself onto the steep rock face, Dylan felt every vibration of the rope. His legs pressed against jagged stone, searching for stable footholds. He moved slowly, hand under hand, the rope supporting his weight. Each shift of his body brought dust and small rocks crumbling away, disappearing into the ravine below. He forced his breathing to remain steady. Halfway down, his right boot slipped on a patch of scree, sending him lurching sideways. Terror flared in his chest as he scrambled to regain balance, clinging to the rope with both hands. For a nauseating moment, he dangled precariously, adrenaline roaring in his ears like a distant waterfall. Finally, he managed to wedge his foot against a small shelf of stone, steadying himself. Heart pounding, Dylan paused, forehead slick with cold sweat. He mentally repeated every climbing tip he knew. Keep 3 points of contact, trust the rope, breathe. Feeling time slow down, every moment measured in careful moves downward. Reaching the narrow ledge, Dylan carefully shifted his weight to stand beside the small bear. Up close, the cub looked even more fragile, its fur matted with dirt and fear. Slowly, Dylan unlooped a sling he had fashioned from spare straps. Soft whispers of reassurance spilled from his lips, hoping to keep the cub calm. With delicate movements, he slipped the sling around the cub's middle. The bear flinched, emitting a distressed yowl, but Dylan placed a gentle hand on its back, murmuring soothing words. After a few tense moments, the cub stilled, allowing him to tighten the makeshift harness. Now came the hardest part, the climb back. Dylan's shoulder throbbed, possibly from when he'd slammed against the rock earlier. Each pull on the rope sent jolts of pain radiating through him, but he grit his teeth, determined not to let go. Inch by inch, he ascended with the cub fastened against his chest. The combined weight made every move a test of strength. At last, he crested the cliff's edge. Exhausted, he hauled himself and the cub onto stable ground. Panting, he lay there momentarily, the cub still wrapped snugly in the sling. Relief flooded him, mingled with pain in his shoulder. Yet one overwhelming thought eclipsed all others. We made it. As Dylan loosened the sling and allowed the cub to stand, he heard branches snapping in the forest. Emerging from the thick undergrowth was a large female bear, clearly the cub's mother. She lumbered forward, powerful muscles rippling beneath her dark fur. Instinctively, Dylan froze. He'd just rescued her baby, but would she see him as friend or foe? Heart pounding, he lifted his hands slowly, backing away so the cub could approach its mother unimpeded. The cub let out a plaintive cry and hobbled over to her. For a moment, the mother bear regarded Dylan with an intensity that took his breath away. Her eyes seemed to convey a quiet understanding, neither aggression nor fear. She bent her muzzle to the cub, gently licking its forehead before returning her gaze to Dylan. Time stretched in that surreal moment, as if a silent connection passed between them. Then, as quickly as she'd arrived, the mother bear turned and led her cub back into the tree line. Dylan exhaled shakily. Exhaustion weighed on him, but also a sense of awe. He had witnessed something extraordinary, a fragile peace between man and wild. Limping with a sore shoulder, he made his way back to his cabin by nightfall, replaying the encounter in his mind. Over the next few days, Dylan noticed strange signs around his cabin. Paw prints in the soft earth, fresh berries left near his porch, claw marks on nearby trees. It was as if the mother bear was repaying him for saving her cub. As time passed, Dylan's bond with the bears deepened in quiet, surprising ways. On solitary hikes, he sometimes glimpsed the mother bear or her cubs at a distance, always observing, but never threatening. A sense of reciprocity blossomed within him. He felt protected in the wilderness, as though part of something greater. Spurred by curiosity, Dylan ventured deeper into unexplored areas. Following faint trails, he discovered a hidden cave system dotted with ancient pictograph. Torch in hand, he walked along the cool, damp stone walls, eyes widening at the images. Bears and humans were depicted side by side, hunting, dancing, or performing rituals under swirling sun symbols. The artwork suggested a time when people saw bears not merely as beasts, but as partners or spiritual guides. Symbols of unity, circles within circles, indicated a shared guardianship of the land. Dylan felt a strange resonance with these markings. Had his encounter on the ledge been foretold by some timeless connection between man and bear? Inspired, Dylan reached out to local wildlife agencies, determined to protect the forest that had so deeply touched his life. He meticulously documented his experiences, from discovering the ancient cave art to recounting his harrowing rescue of the bear cub, and shared these findings with conservation officers. At first, the agencies were intrigued, but cautious. It wasn't every day they received field intel from someone claiming to have an almost mystical connection with a bear. Yet as Dylan described the detailed cave markings, the mother bear's silent guidance, and the tracks he'd observed in hidden corners of the forest, the officials recognized his value. They had been struggling for months to curb illegal poaching operations, hidden snares, barbaric traps for bear fur, and systematic hunts for exotic animal parts. Dylan began coordinating closely with rangers and volunteer groups. Together, they mapped out sections of the wilderness most vulnerable to poachers. On a brisk morning, Dylan and a young ranger named Carla ventured deep into a seldom visited valley where rumors of recent poacher activity had surfaced. As they installed camera traps near a stream, they discovered a battered snare caught around a fallen branch, evidence that the poachers were operating with ruthless efficiency. Distressed animals must have freed themselves or been discarded, judging by the bloodstains on the trap's teeth. Fueled by anger and compassion, Dylan doubled his efforts to set up a covert network of cameras linked to his phone, ensuring that any movement in these remote areas would trigger immediate alerts. Days turned into weeks of hiking obscure trails and painstakingly gathering data. Sometimes in the quiet dawn light, the mother bear or her cubs would appear at the edge of Dylan's vision, as though confirming the path ahead was safe. Other times, he found unmistakable signs, large paw prints overlapping human footprints, a silent reminder that the poachers and wildlife often crossed paths in the same territory. One afternoon, Carla and Dylan stumbled upon an abandoned campsite hidden in dense undergrowth. Strewn about were discarded animal pelts and crude cages, reinforcing the urgency of their mission. The local wildlife authorities, armed with Dylan's photographic evidence, slowly formed a plan to catch the poachers in the act. One moonlit night, the tension finally peaked. Dylan had been combing through the forest to check newly set camera traps when he noticed unsettling activity near a winding creek. Dim lanterns bobbed between the trees, a sure sign of human presence at an unlikely hour. Heart-hammering, he inched closer, hiding behind a thicket. To his horror, he spotted 3 men painstakingly laying sophisticated snares designed to capture large predators. Fear coursed through him, but so did resolve. He discreetly signaled the authorities, who lay in wait nearby. Carefully, Dylan approached a trap and disarmed it by cutting through the triggering mechanism with precision. In that tense moment, the mother bear emerged from the shadows, her powerful silhouette and low growl enough to paralyze the intruders with fear. Alarmed by the sudden appearance of a formidable wild creature, the poachers panicked and scattered, sprinting straight into the path of the waiting wildlife rangers. Dylan exhaled in relief, realizing they had finally taken a crucial step toward protecting these woods and the creatures that had come to trust him. Word of Ethan's courage and the cooperation between man and bear spread. Community members, once indifferent, rallied behind him to protect the forest. Efforts to restore habitats, clean up trails, and fund conservation projects multiplied. It seemed that Ethan's personal act of compassion had ignited a powerful movement. Shortly thereafter, a startling discovery emerged. The mother bear led Ethan to a patch of unusual plants. An expert botanist later identified it as a rare species with potential medicinal properties. Researchers found it had remarkable healing compounds, sparking breakthroughs in treating stubborn diseases. This revelation further underscored the forest's immeasurable value. The media latched onto Ethan's story, a man who risked his life for a bear cub, befriended a mother bear, unearthed ancient unity symbols, and helped dismantle poaching rings. His narrative became a global symbol of how humans and nature could exist in harmony if respect and kindness prevailed. Spurred on by public pressure and local advocacy, legislators pushed for stronger wildlife protection laws. A wave of new initiatives banned harmful traps and enforced stricter penalties for poaching. Communities organized volunteer patrols, environmental awareness campaigns, and educational programs for children, fostering a fresh generation of conservation-minded citizens. Yet, Ethan felt his work was only beginning. The mother bear and her cubs remained in the region, and he refused to let them down. One day, while exploring further reaches of the cave system, Ethan stumbled upon a chamber even more elaborate than the first. Painted on the walls were not only symbols of unity, but also warnings. Images of humans wielding fire and weapons against wildlife, accompanied by collapsed trees and barren landscapes. A sense of foreboding emanated from the depictions, as though cautioning future generations that balance was delicate and could be irrevocably broken if ignored. Contemplating these messages, Ethan resolved to continue educating others. He began speaking at local schools, sharing his story of rescuing the bear cub and forging an extraordinary connection with the mother bear. Over time, word spread, and he was invited to environmental conferences where he advocated for pragmatic conservation strategies that respected local communities while safeguarding wildlife. In time, the label of photographer no longer sufficed to describe Ethan's journey. He had evolved into a dedicated conservationist, tirelessly ensuring that the forests would remain sanctuary to bears and countless other creatures. His grandmother's legacy lived on in each step he took, guided by compassion and an unwavering belief that every life was worth saving. Standing on a ridge one evening, Ethan gazed across rolling forests, golden in the twilight. He could almost feel the silent presence of the mother bear somewhere in those woods, a watchful guardian of her domain. A sense of peace washed over him, and he silently thanked the wilderness for showing him the path forward. No longer just a solitary hiker seeking solace, Ethan Callahan had become a beacon of hope for preserving the bond between humanity and the natural world. This was his legacy: to protect and inspire, just as the ancient markings on those cavern walls foretold, ensuring that man and bear might walk together, guarding the forest for generations to come. How does this story make you feel? Share your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can bring you meaningful stories